Dear learners, welcome back to WSE English Story, where history comes alive, and English learning becomes an unforgettable adventure. Today, we begin a journey into the heart of California, into a story born from the wild days of the gold rush, and transformed into a legacy that changed the world. This is the story of UC Berkeley, but not only as a university. It is the story of a vision, a struggle, and a triumph. Imagine a barren hilltop in the 1860s, where miners, dreamers, and wanderers once passed by. From this soil of chaos and opportunity, a campus grew, one that would produce Nobel laureates, global leaders, and giants of science and thought. But Berkeley is not only about great names. It is about resilience, the courage to rise from disaster, the power to fight injustice, and the determination to challenge limits. In its halls walked people who faced war, earthquakes, and fierce social battles, yet still believed in knowledge as the strongest weapon for a better future. This is not just a history lesson. It is a journey of hope, of courage, and of transformation. As you listen, you will improve your English, but more than that, you will feel inspired to believe in your own power to change the world. If you'd like to support our work, you are welcome to like, comment, and share this story. Your support helps us continue creating meaningful content. So, get ready for a story filled with struggle and triumph. Let's begin the journey. The story of UC Berkeley begins not with classrooms or libraries, but with the sound of pickaxes striking the earth and rivers rushing with gold dust. In 1848, a discovery at Sutter's Mill in California set the world on fire. The gold rush drew thousands from across the globe: Chinese laborers, European fortune seekers, Latin American adventurers, and Americans from the East. They came with dreams of instant wealth, yet most found hardship, disappointment, or a life far different from what they had imagined. By the 1860s, the fever for gold had cooled, but something else had begun to shine brighter than any nugget of metal: the dream of building a society of knowledge. California was still young, rough, and uncertain. Cities like San Francisco were booming ports of commerce, but lawlessness and poverty spread just as quickly. Among these shifting sands, leaders asked themselves a question: what would give this restless land a true future? The answer, many believed, was education. In 1868, a group of visionaries, including ministers, pioneers, and civic leaders, founded a new institution, the University of California. They chose a windswept hill overlooking the bay, across the water from San Francisco. The place was not yet a bustling campus. It was an idea, a promise that even in a land of gamblers and fortune hunters, there could be a sanctuary of learning, where the mind was valued as much as gold. The early years were humble. Students studied Greek, Latin, agriculture, mechanics, and philosophy. The university carried both European traditions and American hopes. It was meant to combine the classical wisdom of the old world with the daring spirit of the new. In this way, Berkeley stood at a crossroads, rooted in history, yet reaching forward to the unknown future. California itself mirrored this tension. It was a land of earthquakes, wild rivers, and shifting fortunes. The Civil War had only just ended, and the nation was struggling to reunite. Waves of immigrants arrived, creating both opportunities and conflicts. For a young university, this meant its mission was not only to educate, but to hold together a fragile and diverse society. The founders of Berkeley believed that knowledge could become the true gold of California. They envisioned an institution that would not only serve the state, but would shine far beyond it. Still, they knew the path ahead would not be easy. For the land that gave birth to Berkeley was also a land of constant trial, where every dream had to be defended. And so, from this fragile beginning, a journey started, a journey that would test the courage, vision, and resilience of the campus and its people. The dream of a university in California was bold, but dreams alone could not build walls or pay salaries. The first years of UC Berkeley were filled with uncertainty, and the challenges arrived one after another, like storm waves crashing against the shore. Money was the most urgent problem. California was still unstable, with much of its economy tied to speculation. Gold flowed in and out of the state, but little of it reached the young institution. Tuition fees were not enough to sustain it, and the state legislature was often reluctant to provide funds. In those fragile years, it was unclear whether Berkeley would survive at all. Would the dream of a great university collapse before it could even take root? Then came another challenge, the question of identity. California was a land of many peoples, and with them came many tensions. Immigrants from Asia faced discrimination, while African Americans fought for dignity in a post-slavery nation. Native peoples were pushed to the margins of society, their lands taken and their voices ignored. In this climate, could a university truly belong to everyone? Or would it become another fortress of privilege, serving only the wealthy and powerful? Even nature seemed to test the resolve of the campus. Earthquakes shook the Bay Area, and fires were constant threats. The first wooden buildings stood vulnerable against the elements. The land itself seemed to ask, "Do you have the strength to endure here?" But perhaps the greatest challenge was less visible. It was the challenge of belief. In a place still haunted by the fever of the gold rush, people asked, "What is knowledge worth? Can books, ideas, and experiments really compete with gold and quick profit?" To many, the pursuit of learning seemed slow, uncertain, and impractical in a world where fortunes could be made overnight. Yet, within this struggle, the seeds of Berkeley's character were planted. The university began to attract students and teachers who were not afraid of hardship. They were sons and daughters of pioneers, immigrants, and dreamers. They came with little money, but with fierce determination. They believed that in a land of chaos, knowledge was the only compass that could guide society forward. One can almost imagine those first students climbing the dusty hill to class, carrying books under the California sun, hearing the distant noise of San Francisco across the bay. They had no guarantee that their education would bring them wealth or fame. What they had was faith, faith that learning could transform their lives, and perhaps the future of the world. But as history often shows, faith alone is not enough. The young university would soon face trials that would demand not just endurance, but transformation. And from those tests, its true spirit would be revealed. So here lies the question, in a land born of fortune seekers and risk-takers, how does a fragile university prove that knowledge is the greatest treasure of all? The survival of UC Berkeley was never guaranteed. In its earliest years, the university seemed less like a great institution and more like a fragile camp of dreamers, clinging to a vision in a world that doubted them. Yet this fragility became its crucible, forcing it to struggle and grow with resilience. The first journey was financial survival. In 1873, the university finally moved to its permanent site in Berkeley, away from its original location in Oakland. The new campus had space, hills, and a view of the bay, but little else. Buildings were scarce, and the land was rugged. Students studied in drafty halls, professors worked with limited equipment, and the library contained only a fraction of the books they needed. Still, they pressed on. State funding arrived in uneven amounts, but with each small victory, the university built a stronger foundation. The second journey was intellectual. Berkeley had been founded with the idea of uniting classical education with practical training. Agriculture and mechanics stood alongside philosophy and literature. This was unusual at the time. Most universities leaned either toward the scholarly or the practical, but not both. Berkeley's willingness to combine them made it both bold and controversial. Critics accused it of lacking focus, but supporters believed this balance would prepare students for the unique demands of California, a land of farmers, miners, merchants, and thinkers all at once. The third journey was cultural. Berkeley became a mirror of California's restless diversity. Students arrived from immigrant families, from farms and city streets, bringing with them the struggles of their communities. They carried not just ambition, but also the wounds of prejudice. The university's leaders wrestled with how to open doors without losing control, how to keep standards high while still offering opportunity. Berkeley would never be a quiet ivory tower. It was born in a land of conflict, and it absorbed that energy into its own character. And then came a test that would define its spirit. In the 1880s and 1890s, California was swept by anti-Chinese sentiment. Laws were passed to exclude Chinese immigrants, and violence often followed. The university faced pressure. Should it follow society's prejudices, or remain faithful to education for all? Some leaders faltered, but others stood firm, insisting that the university's doors should not be closed by race or origin. It was not a perfect victory, but it marked Berkeley as a place willing to wrestle with justice, even when unpopular. These struggles were exhausting, yet also transformative. They forged a toughness in the university's bones. Berkeley began to see itself not only as a school, but as a battleground of ideas, a place where the future of society was tested. Every fire, every financial shortfall, every argument about identity shaped the campus into something more enduring than stone walls. If you could walk across the early campus, you might see simple wooden buildings standing against the wind, students debating under oak trees, professors writing by candlelight, and a sense of determination rising like a flame. It was still fragile, still uncertain, but it was alive, and its spirit was unbreakable. The first journey of Berkeley was not about glory. It was about endurance. About proving, day by day, that in a land where gold could vanish in a single night, knowledge was the treasure that could never be stolen. But the true turning point was yet to come. Soon, events far greater than campus walls, earthquakes, wars, and global upheavals, would thrust Berkeley into struggles that tested not only its survival, but its very soul. At the dawn of the 20th century, Berkeley had survived its fragile beginnings. But survival was not enough. The world was changing, and California stood at the crossroads of history. What happened next would either break the university, or forge it into something greater. The first great test came from the earth itself. On April 18, 1906, the San Andreas Fault ripped through California. The Great San Francisco earthquake shook the Bay Area with devastating force, destroying much of the city across the water. The shockwaves rolled through Berkeley, toppling chimneys, cracking walls, and terrifying students and teachers. For days, the campus became a refuge. Survivors fled from the ruins of San Francisco, carrying whatever belongings they could save, and the university opened its doors to shelter them. In that moment, Berkeley transformed. No longer just a school, it became a sanctuary, a place where community mattered as much as knowledge. The earthquake revealed something deeper, the fragility of human achievement and the strength of human solidarity. The young university could have collapsed under the weight of destruction, but instead it rose to meet the crisis. Faculty and students rebuilt, improvising classrooms, repairing structures, and refusing to let disaster silence learning. Out of the rubble, Berkeley's resilience became visible to all. But nature was not the only force testing Berkeley. As the world moved toward war, the campus became a center of scientific and social transformation. In the 1930s and 1940s, Berkeley's laboratories became the birthplace of discoveries that would change the fate of nations. Scientists such as Ernest O. Lawrence developed the cyclotron, unlocking the secrets of the atom. Knowledge, once confined to textbooks, now carried the weight of life and death. The turning point came during World War II. Berkeley scientists played a central role in the Manhattan Project, the effort to build the atomic bomb. For the first time, the university faced the deepest moral dilemma of knowledge. Should the pursuit of truth be limited by the consequences it might unleash? The campus was divided. Some believed their work would save democracy from fascism. Others feared it would unleash horrors beyond imagination. This moment marked a profound transformation. Berkeley was no longer a fragile campus struggling for survival. It had become a power in global science, a place where discoveries shaped the course of human history. But with this power came burden, the burden of conscience, of responsibility, of asking whether knowledge could be both a weapon and a light. At the same time, social upheavals stirred the campus. The Great Depression had filled California with jobless workers and restless youth. Many turned to protest, demanding justice and reform. Berkeley students and professors were not silent. They debated, they marched, and they carried the voices of the unheard. When the nation trembled between fear and hope, the campus echoed with arguments about freedom, justice, and the role of the university in shaping society. So here lay the true turning point. Berkeley was no longer just reflecting the world around it, it was influencing it. Every earthquake, every scientific breakthrough, every protest carved into its identity a new sense of purpose. The campus was not meant to be safe or silent. It was meant to wrestle with the greatest questions of human existence. Can knowledge save humanity, or can it destroy it? Can a university be both a sanctuary of peace and a forge of powerful, dangerous discoveries? These questions hung in the air, and they still echo today. The gold rush had once promised riches to those who dared. But Berkeley's turning point proved a different promise, that the richest treasure was not in the earth, but in the courage to seek truth, even when truth carried the heaviest price. Every great story reaches a moment where the stakes are highest, where choices carry the weight of destiny. For UC Berkeley, this moment came not in one event, but in a storm of crises that shook the campus from the 1940s through the 1960s. The choices made in those years would forever define its identity. The shadow of the atomic bomb hung heavily over Berkeley. Ernest Lawrence and his colleagues had pushed the boundaries of physics, helping to create weapons that ended World War II, but also unleashed a new age of fear. For many students and professors, pride was mixed with guilt. Could a place devoted to truth reconcile the fact that its discoveries had destroyed cities? The campus became a ground for debate, for protests, for a struggle of conscience. Knowledge had given power, but at what cost? And then came another earthquake, this time not from nature, but from society itself. The 1960s exploded with movements for civil rights, free speech, and opposition to the Vietnam War. Berkeley was at the epicenter. In 1964, students gathered in what became the free speech movement, demanding the right to political expression on campus. Police were called, arrests were made, and Sproul Plaza turned into a battlefield of words and wills. This was the climax of Berkeley's struggle, a choice between silence and courage. Would the university restrict its students to protect its image? Or would it embrace the noisy, chaotic, and sometimes painful voice of democracy? The choice was not simple. Faculty were divided. Politicians demanded order. Yet the students persisted, some at the cost of their studies, some at the cost of their freedom. They believed that silence in the face of injustice was a deeper failure than any broken rule. The sacrifice was real. Careers were derailed. Friendships were torn apart. The campus itself seemed to fracture under the weight of conflict. Yet from this turmoil came transformation. Berkeley became a symbol not just of academic excellence, but of fearless expression, of the belief that universities must not only teach knowledge but also defend the right to use it freely. Imagine the scene, thousands of young voices rising against the backdrop of marble buildings and oak trees, chants echoing into the California night. Police lines clashed with students who refused to back down. The air smelled of tear gas and defiance. It was messy, chaotic, and unforgettable. And yet, in that chaos, a principle was born: freedom is not given, it is claimed, and it must be defended with sacrifice. This climax was not without cost to reputation. Critics called Berkeley a place of rebellion, chaos, even treason. Yet others saw it as a beacon, a university that dared to live by the courage of its students. From those struggles, Berkeley forged its identity not as a quiet campus of compliance, but as a crucible of democracy, science, and justice. And here, dear learner, is where the story invites you in. Imagine yourself as a student then. Would you have joined the protests? Would you have risked arrest for the right to speak freely? Or would you have stayed silent, fearing the consequences? These questions are not only about the past, they are about us, about every generation that must choose between safety and courage. The climax of Berkeley's story shows us this: true greatness is never achieved without sacrifice. Knowledge without conscience is empty. Freedom without risk is fragile. And courage without struggle is only a dream. Out of the fire of conflict, UC Berkeley emerged stronger, its spirit tested and proven. The campus that had once been fragile now stood as a giant, recognized not only in California, not only in America, but across the world. The victories that followed were not measured only in awards or discoveries, but in the transformation of the university into a beacon of knowledge, courage, and influence. The most visible achievements came in science. Berkeley became a powerhouse of discovery, with Nobel Prizes flowing steadily into its halls. From the development of atomic research to breakthroughs in chemistry, physics, and biology, the university's laboratories became places where the future was being written. The periodic table itself grew on Berkeley's soil, with elements like berkelium, californium, and seaborgium discovered by its scientists. To walk through its research centers was to walk in the footsteps of minds that reshaped humanity's understanding of nature. But science was not Berkeley's only crown. The campus also became a leader in social thought, literature, law, and economics. Professors and students challenged conventions, reimagined society, and inspired movements that rippled far beyond California. Ideas born in Berkeley's classrooms shaped policies in Washington, stirred debates in Europe, and fueled reforms across Asia and Latin America. Berkeley was not just observing history, it was making it. Its alumni spread across the globe, carrying the spirit of resilience and boldness. Some became leaders of nations, others pioneers of technology, still others champions of justice. Whether in boardrooms, laboratories, courtrooms, or parliaments, the influence of Berkeley stretched like sunlight across continents. And within the campus itself, diversity flourished. Berkeley opened its doors wider than many of its peers, welcoming students from different backgrounds, cultures, and nations. The children of farmers studied beside the children of immigrants, and voices once silenced found a place to be heard. The university became a living example that greatness grows when many roots feed the same tree. This victory was not without scars. The memory of protests, divisions, and dilemmas remained, reminding Berkeley that progress is never smooth. But the scars became part of its strength, proof that true growth comes through struggle. Today, when people look at the sweeping view from the Berkeley Hills, when they see the iconic campanile rising against the sky, they do not see only a campus. They see a symbol that even in a land of earthquakes and uncertainty, a community built on knowledge and courage can rise higher than stone. And perhaps the greatest achievement of all is this: Berkeley gave the world not only knowledge, but a spirit, the belief that education is not passive, but active, not a privilege for the few, but a power for the many. Its legacy is not just in laboratories or libraries, but in the countless lives it has transformed. So, the fragile gold rush dream became a global reality. From the dusty hills of the 1860s to the Nobel stages of the 20th century, Berkeley proved that resilience, courage, and sacrifice can turn even the most uncertain beginning into a story of greatness. The journey of UC Berkeley is not just the story of a university. It is the story of how a fragile dream, born in a restless land of gold seekers, grew into a beacon for the world. From its first struggles for survival, through earthquakes, wars, and protests, Berkeley showed again and again that greatness is forged not in comfort, but in trial. Its legacy can be seen in two dimensions. The first is the obvious one: achievement. Nobel laureates, world leaders, groundbreaking discoveries, and social revolutions all traced their roots to this campus on the Hill. Berkeley proved that knowledge is not a luxury, but a force that shapes nations and guides humanity forward. But the deeper legacy is not found in awards or fame. It is found in the spirit that has guided Berkeley through every storm: resilience, courage, and the belief that education must serve something greater than itself. This spirit tells us that knowledge without conscience is dangerous, that freedom without responsibility is fragile, and that progress without struggle is hollow. For English learners listening now, there is a lesson here that goes beyond history. Berkeley's story reminds us that growth always begins in uncertainty. Just as students once climbed those dusty hills with little more than faith in their hearts, you too may face challenges in your own learning journey. Progress may feel slow, and setbacks may come, but every step you take builds strength, every word you learn opens a door, and every struggle prepares you for victory. So, what is the true legacy of UC Berkeley? It is not only a campus. It is a symbol that human beings, even in times of chaos and fear, can rise together to build something that outlasts earthquakes, wars, and prejudice. It is the reminder that education is not about escaping struggle, but about transforming it into something greater. And here is a question for you: in your own life, what is the Berkeley you are building? What dream, fragile at first, might one day stand tall if you nourish it with courage and persistence? The lesson of Berkeley is clear: treasure is not found in the earth, but in the human spirit's ability to endure, to question, and to rise. Dear learners, we have walked together through the story of UC Berkeley, from a fragile dream on a dusty hill to a giant whose voice echoes across the world. We have seen how earthquakes, wars, and social storms could not silence its mission. We have seen how courage and sacrifice turned a campus into a symbol of resilience and freedom. And perhaps, the truest lesson of all is this: you, too, have the power to rise. Just as Berkeley began with almost nothing but determination, so too can your own journey begin with a single step, a single word, a single act of courage. There is a saying often heard around Berkeley, fiat lux, let there be light. These words are more than a motto. They are a call to each of us. A call to bring light into dark places, to bring knowledge into ignorance, to bring hope into despair. That is the legacy of Berkeley, and it can also be your legacy. So, if this story has inspired you, carry it forward. Share it with a friend. Speak about it, think about it, and let its lesson shine in your own journey. And if you'd like to support our work, you are always welcome to like, comment, and subscribe, not just for us, but to help us continue bringing stories of courage, history, and humanity to learners like you. Until next time, remember this, struggle is not the end, but the beginning of transformation. Keep learning, keep dreaming, and keep building the Berkeley within you. Goodbye for now.